Yo, what's up, After Hours Entrepreneur? Really excited to share this episode with you. We're talking a lot about podcast production and some best practices so that you can produce a great podcast and simplify that. We're talking a lot about that jump from being an employee to being the employer, that jump from turning your side hustle into your full-time income. And David has a great story. Stay tuned. David Perez is coming right up for you. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by the CEO of TalkingSilkworm.com. This is a podcast production agency specifically designed for health and wellness coaches. So listen, we're talking here to David Perez today. I cannot wait to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is podcast production. David, what up?
Hello, Mark. Thank you very much for having me.
David, my pleasure. Thrilled to chat with you here today. Of course, links to everything David's doing in the notes here, but David, I'm going to get right into it, and I want to kind of backtrack. I want to go back to when you got started in podcast production. Tell me a little bit about that. Tell me a little bit about the formulation of your business.
I didn't formulate it. I think that's the best part. I didn't. I kind of fell into it by accident. I'm a teacher. I have a background in a degree in education. I still teach sometimes. But as a teacher, part of my job was being an online teacher, and I started producing podcasts for my students. So it was like more of a complementary thing for an educational process. And then I decided to create some podcasts for myself as a hobby. And then I decided to start doing it for other people. And the more I did it for other people, the more referrals I got, the more people I found that were interested in having this kind of services, or like they really require this kind of services. So like people just came. And the market has a huge need for podcasts right now, for podcast producers, podcast coaches, podcast editors. And I think it was just I got into the wave at the right time.
Love it. So you're an after-hours entrepreneur at heart. You were working a main job, a 9 to 5, and you're turning your side hustle into your primary source of income, right?
I did, yes. I did turn my kind of my side job into my main job. Now my education job as a teacher is something I do occasionally, maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 times per week.
Well, listen, that is the dream. That's what after hours entrepreneurs want to do. We want to really build something that we love and we enjoy, like podcast production, and turn that into our primary source of income. So, but I got to ask you, David, how scary, well, actually, I don't want to say how scary it was. I want to know a little bit more about how you actually got the word out there. So what was the point in your production process where you're working for these clients, you're producing podcasts? What was the certain point where you said, okay, I've got enough traffic coming in, I've got enough work coming in, I've got enough credibility that I can actually really devote all my time to this? What was that point?
Yeah, it was the point when I had to hire an additional team member. Like it was just me at the beginning, and then I had to hire somebody else. And then there was a point where we both had our hands full of work. And I said, okay, this is it. Like this is a kind of a stable thing. It doesn't seem like the other like my main job back at the time was giving me as much stability, and like the income wasn't as good. So I decided to switch. Yeah, it was like mainly there is a point where you see there is so much work coming in that you are not able to say yes to everybody. I think that's a good sign. That's a very good sign.
Yeah, that's a really good sign. And when did that start? When was that time? Was that very recently, a few years ago? When did that start?
Oh, that was 4 years ago. I think it was about 4 years ago.
Cool.
It didn't happen overnight. Of course, it happened over the course of a few months. But yeah, it was like something that you only realize you're there after like a few months after you've been in that situation for a while.
So when you started your business about 4 years ago and you're starting to really bring on lots of clients, I want to talk a little bit about the service that you were giving at that time. And I want to talk about how your services have kind of evolved as you've gotten to know your clients, as you've refined your team and your systems. How were you serving clients day one? And how are you serving clients now? How has that evolved? Give me a little bit of background there.
Okay, the core of our services is the technical side of podcasts. So it's mainly the editing side. People send us the audio and we take care of like making it sound nice and sending it back to them. But as we had interaction with the clients, we found out that there were other very strong needs both on the technical side and on the planning slash strategical side. So on the technical side, a lot of them were using like really crappy mics, the built-in mics in their laptops or their headphones, or some of them even had like Blue Yeti microphones, but they were not using them right. So we started providing this additional tech support service to the clients. We were teaching them how to set up and use microphones properly, or what microphones to get. Sometimes like they had no idea what microphones to get, because it's very common that they are experts in their field. A lot of my clients are coaches, health and wellness coaches, but they are not technically savvy, or they are not familiar with like all the recording gear stuff. So we have done all that coaching, and also in terms of the planning and strategy, we are helping them define the concept of the show, because for them, it was very difficult at the beginning to know, okay, this is going to be my show, but maybe the concept was way too broad or way a little bit off track with what the actual audience was. So we help them like narrow down the niche, narrow down the topic, narrow down the concept of the show, and research and plan for some of the content. So that helps the client not only just get started in terms of the recording, but we also want to ensure that the client is going to be creating content and working on building an audience for a long period of time.
Super, super important. And you brought up a good point here. I think, David, I want to highlight, and that's knowing the hardware that you have, because I have a podcast production company myself here at Savant Media, and the better the content that comes in, the better the final product is going to look and sound.
Yes.
Right? I think we'd all agree with that. So I want to talk a little bit about the Blue Yeti mic. The Blue Yeti mic is one of the most popular mics on the market, and it's what we call omnidirectional mic. David, tell me, how can I actually use a Blue Yeti mic and sound good?
Okay, before I say that, if you haven't bought a Blue Yeti mic, please don't buy a Blue Yeti mic, okay? I do not recommend that microphone, because like, if you are a person who's just starting or who is doing recording for the first time, it's going to give you a lot of headache. If you already have a Blue Yeti mic, it's going to be very important that you take into account a group of elements. I think it's 2 or 3 elements. The first one is the Blue Yeti has a series of polar patterns, so you got to make sure the right polar pattern is set up. The polar pattern is where the microphone is picking the sound up from. So sometimes it's from the front of the mic, sometimes it's from all around the mic, or maybe from the front and the back. So there is a dial, there is a knob in the mic that you need to adjust, and it always needs to be in the cardioid mode, which is the one picking up sound only from the front. So
and I just want to kind of clarify something. The problem that we're talking about here with having what we call an omnidirectional mic, like the Blue Yeti, is it picks up a lot of ambient noise. It can pick up sound bouncing off of walls. And so this is really good. Selecting the dynamic cardioid option is going to allow it to pick up what's right in front of it, your face.
Yes. That is one thing you need to take into account. The other thing is distance. You need to shorten the distance from your mouth into the mic. So the ideal distance should be around, I don't know, like I need to convert centimeters to inches. So that will be about like 2 or 3 inches away from the mic maximum. The farther the distance, the more ambient noise and reverberation you're going to get into the recording. So you need to make that distance shorter. And also by making the distance shorter, you're going to be able to turn down the input levels in the microphone. That means, of course, less ambient noise. And another very common situation that happens with the Blue Yeti mic, and I think you have struggled with this, is people don't know how to position the mic. Like they speak into the top of the mic because like that's how you see most mics are used. So they speak into the top of it, but actually you need to speak into the front of it. And that's why a lot of people get like crappy audio sometimes, is because like they are pointing the capsule or the part that receives the sound, that picks up the sound, it's pointed downwards instead of towards the mouth. So it's like, imagine like this mic looks like R2-D2 from Star Wars. It's like, imagine you're having a conversation with R2-D2. You're speaking face to face. You're not speaking into the top of it. You're speaking facing the robot, in this case, facing the mic. So that is another very common situation. And finally, I will say pop filter or foam bowl to stop those P's and T's. A little bit, because sometimes they are very, very strong. The Blue Yeti is very sensitive. So that's what I would recommend if you have a Blue Yeti mic. If you haven't bought that one yet, I would recommend going for another one, which is, I think, the one you're using right now, Mark. That is the ATR 2100 or ATR 2100X, or the Samsung Q2U, which is like pretty much the same mic, just with another brand. Those are great, not as sensitive. They are not gonna give you as many headaches, and they're super easy to use.
Yeah, I love and you're right, it's the ATR 2100. Again, dynamic cardioid, easier to listen to. But I just want to encourage everyone, whatever mic you've got, you can get started, but we always want to continue to be improving. And something that I think is really important if you're experimenting with a new mic is listening back to your mic recordings, right? So for example, you might say, now I'm using the Blue Yeti on omnidirectional. How does this sound? Is there too much echo? Then you might change it. Now I'm using the Blue Yeti on the cardioid setting with my face over the top of the robot, right? So just play with it, listen to it, and be honest with yourself. You know, I think that's a really good point. All right, so let's keep moving on. So you've got this business, it's rolling. I actually, before I get rolling too far, I heard Chris Do talk about this the other day. Chris Do is
love
the
him.
creator of the future. Just
Yes.
Phenomenal creator. I love me some Chris Do. And one of the things that he's pointed out, I want your opinion on this, is what we call job creep, right? You bring on a new client and you agree to some work, but as you're going into that work and going into that job, they say, well, can you do this for me? What about this? Can you do this for me too? And all of a sudden, what you agreed to ends up kind of ballooning into all these other sub-project or side projects within that main project that you've agreed to. Okay, so just kind of setting up. This is something that happens when you're in the services industry.
Yes.
Okay. However, Chris Do made this point that when you're starting off, you want to over deliver to your clients. If you over deliver while you're new, you're going to get those referrals. And then as you've gained credibility, you've gained leads, then you could be a little bit more stringent with what you do. I'm paraphrasing what Chris said because he's a genius. I just wanted your thoughts, David, on not power creep, on this job creep, and how do you vision job creep, both when you're first starting that side hustle versus where you're at now in your journey?
Okay, I think I will need to refer back to the idea that you mentioned of over delivering. Yes, you should under promise and over deliver when you're starting out. I think that is a very, very good way for getting client satisfaction and referrals. And sometimes it's okay to go the extra mile. Like you don't have as many clients, you're just building a reputation. So it's okay sometimes to go that extra mile, do that extra piece of work. Of course, within the limits.
I've got the quote here. It just came to my mind. The quote here, David, is if you deliver more for less now, you'll get less for more in the future.
Yes.
Right. Which is, again, paraphrasing a little bit, but yeah, that's the phrase that Chris used. I was like, wow, I've always been terrified of doing this extra work, but maybe I should be doing more in order to get those referrals, right? Do you think how do you think that plays out, and how did that impact your referrals?
Okay, there is a thing here, and it's how you conceive work, like the word work in the abstract way. And for me, work is an act of service. Like you want to help people achieve a result or get to a goal that you want to get. It's not just the transaction. It's not like so much. I will do this for you, and if you pay me this amount of money, it's like I want to help you get to where you want to get. I want to be your partner in this path. So I think that changes the switch a little bit. If you see the situation as a transaction, you're gonna be very limited to just, okay, if you want me to do this extra thing, you're gonna have to pay more. Or if you want me to do this, you will have to rearrange the contract or something like that. But sometimes there are like very little things you can do for a client that will create a great impact in the result and how they perceive you, that are gonna guarantee that they're gonna stay with you for a longer time, and they're gonna be referring you to other people. So I do think under-promising and over-delivering is a very important thing when you're just starting out. And sometimes going the extra mile, like sometimes it's things that will take, I don't know, extra 20 minutes, extra 30 minutes, but will definitely create an impact. So I will say, yes, go for it. But you need to be aware that you need to set boundaries and limits. Like if it's gonna take you, if the additional work is like the same size as the original project, so you need to talk to the client. So you need to be aware of how much you're willing to do or how far you're willing to go in this extra mile. And now, in once you have like a larger client base and something I very frequently do, Mark, is in order to avoid like or to prevent the project from going outside like the original agreement, I create a very precise and very specific proposal or agreement that identifies where we start and where what the project scope is. And I also add a clause that says if further changes need to be made or if other pieces of other deliverables need to be created, so that will be charged separately. So from the very beginning, the client is going to know, and this needs to be written, okay? This is not something that is going to be verbal. This needs to be written down and sent to the client. So from the very beginning, the client is going to know what the scope is going to be, and if they want to go beyond the scope, that's doable, that's possible, but they are going to be charged an additional fee for that.
What you're kind of talking about is this results-oriented style of selling, right? You're not dictating out every single step and every single hashtag or keyword, right? It's impossible. What you want to do is achieve that result. How do we get there? And honestly, when you're drafting a contract, when you're drafting a proposal, you're really not going to know all the ins and outs. You kind of learn that as you go, you know? So if I'm hearing you correctly, and this is something that I think comes with time and experience, is setting a realistic expectation up front.
Yes.
Right? Because the more clients you work with, the better understanding you have of what your client's going to need and how to get there.
Yes. Sometimes the client, like maybe they have like unrealistic expectations because they don't know the work or the time or their technical requirements the job entails. So by you providing this on a document is going to give them like realistic expectations of what the work is, what the results are going to be, and how long the delivery is going to take. That is very important because, and I think you've had the situation, Mark, like for example, you have a client recording like a 1 hour episode with a really crappy microphone. There is lots of background noise, there is cats mewing, and there is traffic noise. And then they are upset because they are not hearing, like the end result is not a recording studio quality type of audio. So you got to tell them from the very beginning that the quality of the audio, for example, is going to depend on the gear they're using or on the original piece of or the original quality of audio they are recording. So yeah, that is very important, setting up the expectations right from the beginning. And for this, you need, and this is very important, you need to jump on a call with the client. You need to always jump on a call with the client, because sometimes there are some clients who, even before you've had a conversation with them, they are already sending you like files for you to process.
Right.
But you don't know what their expectations are. So before you rush into doing this job, jump in a call with the client and set the expectations and set the boundaries and agreements in terms of what the scope is and what the turnaround times are.
So I have a question here, David. So when you're hopping on a call with a client, doing like what I'd call a discovery call, getting a better understanding of their needs, what they've got, where they want to go, doing the whole brand build out, messaging, psychographics, all of that.
Yeah.
Typically what's going to happen is, the clients get, well, actually okay. So the discovery call kind of happens after this, but one of the issues I run into when I'm on like a sales call with a potential new client is at the end of the call, they're going to ask me to send them a proposal. Okay.
Yes.
And immediately when I hear that, my heart sinks, because creating custom proposals takes a lot of work. That could be an hour or more to craft a good proposal. And then when you hear crickets back, you're like, I just spent 20 minutes on a phone call plus another hour and a half crafting this proposal, and I haven't gotten anywhere. So one of the things that's come to my attention now is sometimes crafting custom proposals when you've got like a really hot lead, but also creating these what I consider a capability deck. It's kind of like a rough estimate of the services that you offer, an estimated price. And I found that also can help with that job creep type of problem. When you're clear on this is what you get, or at least set an expectation, it kind of helps to prevent that client from setting an unrealistic expectation, right? I'm just wondering, do you do anything like that? How do you handle the actual, the sales and onboarding process so you don't get caught up in these long calls?
All right, so there are two things I provide the client with, Mark. The first one is a checklist, a podcast setup checklist, so that from the beginning. They already know what they're going to need to get started, and I will not need to include that in the proposal. So it's a checklist that is going to be the same for everybody, and you can just send them the link, and they're going to have that information. So that's going to cut a lot of extra content in the proposal. They are going to have that in advance, the checklist. And the other thing is, I try to keep my proposals very short. Because as you say, like if you try to craft that to the client's specific needs, it's going to take a long time, and you don't know if you're going to hear back from them. So what I do, and this depends on how niche you are, the clients you have are usually going to have the same kind of requirements of the same kind of situation. So if you get to understand what the common requirements are in your niche, it's going to be easier for you to create a proposal, that kind of a template that you can easily adjust in some aspects, okay? And then deliver that to the client. So that's what I do. I have a call with them. I jump on a call with them, and I listen to them, and I have a template, or I have like 2 or 3 templates. After the call, of course, I take a lot of notes. As we're speaking, I take a lot of notes, and then I adapt the template to their needs. So it's usually like a 1-2 page document, but it's something that already fits what I've learned the clients in my niche usually need.
Right. And I think that's something that you've done well, David. You know, I'm pretty broad. I do podcast production, you know, generally for coaches, real estate agents, things like that. But you focus specifically on health and wellness.
Yes.
Why did you make that decision? I'm assuming you didn't start off that way. Why did you make the decision to really focus on health and wellness coaches?
Okay, there are 2 reasons. One of them, because the market just led me there. A lot of the referrals I started getting were health and wellness coaches. And the other side is because I have kind of a background. I like doing meditation, mindfulness. My ex-wife is a holistic therapist, and like I am surrounded by this kind of professionals. So for me, it's very easy to understand when I'm listening to a podcast by a health and wellness coach. Like if they are speaking about a particular topic, it's easy for me to understand what they're talking about, who their audience is, all the vocabulary, all the jargon, all the concepts. All the issues that they want to address. So for me, it's very easy to identify that. So on one side is like my personal background and experience, and on the other side is the market. And I think it's better because that way, like the better you can understand your client's audience, the better you can help your client as well. So I know, for example, the kind of clients the kind of clients health and wellness coaches have is mostly like female. They are within a particular age range, a particular income level. So if you get to understand, also you get to understand what the struggles they have, like what their family is built, how their family is built, and all that. So by knowing that and by understanding that better, you can help the client better. Of course, I've had clients that are outside of that mold. I've had clients who create content around, for example, wedding photography, or real estate, or technology. So you can do that. But there is a limit. For example, I've had clients who create content around like legal stuff. And I like, for me, that is another language. Like that is like a foreign or I cannot understand. Like if I cannot understand what they're saying because I don't understand this legal jargon, like for me, it's very hard to help them. Or if there are other clients, there was another client who was creating content around like cryptocurrencies. I don't understand anything about that, Mark. So for me, it's very hard. If I don't understand what the client is saying and I don't understand what the audience's needs are, sometimes I prefer just to let them go to somebody else who can be more connected to the content.
Yeah. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And that is one of the biggest challenges that I have with clients and with my team. It's how can I have because the client is the expert, absolute genius. They know their field. Your attorney example. How do I create systems to help that person's knowledge pour into me and my teams efficiently? And so that's one of the things that I've been challenged with. But I love this idea, David, and I heard Tony Robbins say this the other day, is, simplicity. You got to keep things simple. And I love, if you're serving the same market, you're serving similar types of clients.
Yep.
You've already done your keyword research, the psychographic, the demographic, that makes a lot of sense to me. Plus your proposals are probably a lot faster.
Yes.
Because you already know how to execute the plan. Yes. Really good stuff.
Yes.
Really good stuff, correct. David. So David, Before I let you go here, I do want to know from you, give me a success story. Give me a story of someone that came to you, had no idea what they were doing, and then after working with you, you were able to pull a few strings, you were able to shift a few things around, and we're able to convert an idea into a great show. Give me an example. Give me a story.
Oh my God. Okay. I've had several success stories, and it will also depend on the background the client has. So, for example, I've had a couple of clients who were really big influencers in health and wellness, particularly in nutrition and healthy eating. They had large audiences on Instagram, and then they decided to start their podcast shows. So I helped them start their podcast shows, and their podcast shows ended up being the core or the main element that connected or that connects their community together. So like even though they started out as social media influencers, the podcast became their core service. So
let me ask you a question before we keep going. It can be very difficult to transition your audience from a platform like Instagram to a podcast. It can be very difficult to do that.
Yes.
Give me 3 quick takeaways. If I'm a health and wellness coach and I want my Instagram followers to listen to my podcast, what are 3 ways I can convert there?
Okay, it's very challenging. It's very challenging because sometimes people are just looking for content that is quick. Okay, if you're on social media, Instagram, TikTok, for example, you're looking for content that is quick. But a lot of people are not going to transition, and that's a reality. And that's fine. That's fine. But the people who do transition, they are going to be more likely to connect with you. And eventually, if you're going to be selling like products or services, like, for example, my clients, they sell cookbooks. It's going to be easier for you to convert there. But I think you can use the platform as a way to provide a lot of calls to action. Yes, to lead people into your podcast, constantly make call to actions on your show, and also repurpose content from the show, like extra clips from the show, make them or convert them into audiograms or extract audio clips if you're recording video as well. Put that into social media and then add a call to action so they go and find you on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or like whatever platform you prefer.
Love it. All good tips. I will say that this is something I've been thinking a lot about recently, like obsessively about recently. And I think it's really important. And I'm really focusing on this with my team when it comes to platforms like Instagram, LinkedIn. I don't think we should just be repurposing just for the sake of repurposing. I think we should be looking, and I'm sure you agree with me, I think we should be looking into that episode and finding the golden nuggets of information that are really going to help our audience. Social media is not about, hey, look, I have a new podcast. Social media is about, I'm going to give you a quick win.
Yes.
You know, you can drop 10 pounds by dropping chocolate, whatever it is, right? You probably can't do that, but I think that's a really important distinction. We're not just throwing up audiograms just to throw up audiograms. We want to throw up an audiogram because it's going to actually be something that's going to provide value to someone. So, and now let me just say that's not easy to do. That is not easy to do. It's not easy to do, but it's possible. And if you connect with people like David at audiencecoach.com, he's going to help you with that. That's audiencecoach.com. David, thanks for being here today, brother.
Really appreciate it, Mark. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Hey, listen, if you're an after hours entrepreneur, you need to go into the comments. You need to go into the show notes below and make sure you connect with David. Great dude. David, thank you, man.
Thank you very much.
Yo, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it and found it as fascinating as I did. There's no doubt in my mind that if you're applying these principles, you are going to be able to turn your side hustle into your primary income source. I want that for you. Do you want that for you? Let me know. Hit me up, mark@marksavantmedia.com. That's my personal frickin' email to you, mark@marksavantmedia.com. Tell me a little bit about yourself. What are you struggling with? I will hook you up with some help. mark@marksavantmedia.com. Oh yeah, and by the way, if you're still listening, if you're still watching, now is the time to subscribe. You want to subscribe so you don't miss out. You want to know when new episodes go live so you can continue to grow your brand and take that side hustle into your full-time income source. Boom, done. Another episode in the books. I'll catch you next time on the After Hours Entrepreneur. Peace.